Holy cow, did you guys see what happened in Macau? Petr Yan just outclassed Deiveson Figueiredo across 25 minutes of face punching. 50-45s across the board, and now he wants another crack at Merab Dvalishvili. Mike, kick things off. Let's talk about the big card in Macau.
Yeah, Petr Yan, so impressive in this fight, man. Really just a vintage performance, even better than vintage, maybe in the minds of some. If you look at the fact that he came off an ACL surgery, a layoff into this fight, it didn't look like he missed a beat at all against Deiveson Figueiredo in there. Yeah, Figueiredo had a couple good moments, but Yan, the way he was putting it together, that trip he had late in the second round, the combinations, just everything he was doing in there was unreal, showed that he is still very much an elite bantamweight. And man, even during his rough times, that weird losing streak he had, I never sold my stock in Petr Yan. He has been unreal in my mind forever, and this was a performance that validated. If anyone's selling their Petr Yan stock out there, I will gobble it up. So impressed, man. He's the truth, and I can't wait to see him in a very, very significant fight at bantamweight after this.
I noticed he said significant. The title shot, it's going to be tough.
I think we still got to go with Umar, right? He's been promised it. He's been told, like, I would like to see that fight. There's that heat with Merab there that just continues to grow. For me, that's the fight you got to do, but he's right there after it. I mean, it's hard to be like, jump the queue for a guy who's undefeated and has a nice win over Corey Sandhagen recently, for a guy who, for better or worse, a year and a half ago did get 50-45 by Merab Dvalishvili. So I think a little work to do before you get to that rematch.
Agreed, but we always hear people making the case for other fighters. In fact, there's one in the chat room. Mark England says, give Yan the Sugar Show rematch. Sorry, I misinterpreted. I thought he wanted the Sugar Show rematch.
That's a rematch I'm down for sure.
Merab. Yeah. I like it as well. And folks, you can be a part of the show by chiming in here through Facebook, like Bilal Marwat is doing, or through YouTube, obviously. And the best ones get on the show. Nolan, your reaction, man, to what happened in Macau at the top of the bill. Petr Yan defeating Deiveson Figueiredo.
Yeah, I mean, Mike kind of touched on it there, all the bases, but he looked fantastic. I mean, that was a really fight that I think a lot of us were looking forward to. Really, two high-level competitors at bantamweight. It was so fun to watch too. Like, shout out to Figueiredo. I'm still very interested to see where he goes at bantamweight from here. But Petr Yan reinstilled himself in that conversation. I don't think it will be a title fight next. Obviously, like Bon said, same thing. Umar is next. That's the fight to make. Now, will the schedules align with Ramadan, everything else? There's some, Merab's obviously saying what he's saying online. I don't see the path for Petr right now. Like, I don't see it being an immediate shot, but there is certainly a path. So, one more fight. I like the O'Malley rematch that you mentioned, George. I think that makes a lot of sense depending on Sean's timeline as well. But bantamweight just continues to be fun, and it was great to see a guy like Yan get back in the mix, because I think even though he has some losses, he's a guy that always seems to take one step forward and move. Take one step backward and move two steps forward.
Nolan, who are the Muslim fighters that observe the religious holidays? I know you're talking about Umar Nurmagomedov right now, but what about Merab Dvalishvili or Petr Yan? Do you know about them, or were you referencing them as well, lumping them?
No, I don't think either of them. I could be wrong, but I don't think either of them celebrated. I think they're both okay. They're not. Either of them are Muslim, but yeah, the Umar situation is really, I think, what it comes down to is, with that coming up, I think, the UFC kind of was interested in maybe booking that fight in January and even in December at one point. And so now that kind of leaves February, which is the Sydney card, right? And then March, I believe, is when it starts to go into Ramadan. So I think Merab wanted like a normal period of time off. He wanted like March or so. And then obviously Umar wants to sneak in that fight before Ramadan begins. Right. Otherwise, you're looking at June or something, July, when you throw in the preparation as well. So I think that's kind of where this contention is brewing from, and why Merab's kind of throwing these other names out there, is that I don't think he wants to be put into this, like, you have to fight Umar by our deadline, has to be and fly across the world and get taxed up the rear end in Sydney to take this fight or whatever. So, and I think too, also, he's probably learned from his teammate, Aljamain Sterling too, about kind of getting, put in a situation where you make a quick turnaround when you're not really feeling it. So we'll see what happens. Like, I'm not saying February's out of the picture, but I think that's kind of the line that's being drawn here, and where there's maybe some difficulty in booking that fight.
All right. Now, Dan, Tom, you booked this fight unofficially a few years ago. Did it live up to, on your end? Did you enjoy it?
Man, I've been booking this fight. I want to say since 2018, but the earliest tweet I could find was, only over a half a decade ago, folks, in early 2019. But this is why people like Figueiredo didn't even have the title back then. Figueiredo's a flyweight. No, he's not. He is a bantamweight. He has proven that, and both these guys have proven why I've been calling for this matchup. Why fresh matchups, when you base it off stylistic affairs, you can't go wrong. I hate when you guys bring up a good point about a rematch because I'm so sick of rematches. All we've been getting since the pandemic is Dana White pulling the e-brake up to the kids going, all right, losers, get in. We got contender series, middleweights, and rematches. Like, I feel like that's all we've been getting for like the last 2 or 3 years here, folks. Seriously, look at it. There's a rematch literally booked on every card. Even like lower level WMMA stuck on the prelims. Like, hey, these two fought like in the regionals, not even in Invicta. Let's go ahead and run that back. Stop with the rematches. This fight was great. Fresh matchups. And I will say, because it'll tag us going forward, this fight in the co-main event was like, props to Mike Bond and others for smartly not selling their stock right with Petr Yan, because like 4 of those losses, like, are arguably not even losses for Petr Yan if you go look back at it. Like, it's only his fight to Merab Dvalishvili did this guy really lose, where, not to jump ahead in the co-main event, there's a fighter that arguably could and should be on an 0-4 losing streak, and probably she showed why. So records can be deceiving, folks. So smart move on you, Mr. Bond, for not selling that stock.
All right, and just to be clear, you don't want to see Figueiredo go back down and fight Moreno a 5th time. It seems like you're not a fan of rematches.
Please no. We already sold his prime. We already gave away this guy's prime fighting Moreno. Like, I'm surprised he put up as good of a fight as he did, right? It was amazing. Props to Figueiredo, by the way.
It breaks these guys mentally more than maybe even physically, just the same person, the same bullseye. Props to Petr Yan. He's looked great these last 2 fights. You can tell he's gotten better, and he knew he needed to, because some big tough fights await him, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the title fight next for him. But with Figueiredo, what do we do with him, Mike Bond? This is your wheelhouse here on Sundays. What's next for the stars from the previous night's card? If you put yourself in the shoes of a Maynard or a Shelby out in the UFC matchmaking offices.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing for him, right, is that even though this was a high-profile main event and all that stuff, he's still very fresh in the bantamweight division. Only 4 fights in. Yeah, he's already fought, 2 former champs and some top contenders, but still an abundance of fresh faces for him too. So you can't really go wrong if you want to do anything. You could do the Corey Sandhagen fight if he doesn't end up getting Sean O'Malley. You could do like a Mario Bautista. You could do Kyler Phillips, any of these guys kind of on the lower end of the rankings right now, and give him a chance to bounce back. And he restarts the climb. He said in this post-fight interview, I always come back stronger. So I think he'll have the chance to represent that. And I think this would be good for him. A setback, but I don't think we write Davidson Figueiredo off as someone who can be a contender at bantamweight.
You like those options, Nolan? You got one for yourself there you want to share with us?
No, I mean, I think those were good. I think that's pretty much. I think it's pretty clear right now at the top of the division. Like, again, timeline I think is going to be a big part of this. Like, when is O'Malley back from his injury? When does this title fight take place? So maybe there would be some sort of booking that's kind of out of bounds. But I think that the way that things are laid out right now, it's pretty clear, like, what the next title fight should be and what the next #1 contender fight should be.
Well, just remember, according to matchmakers John Anik and Ali Abdelaziz, it looks like Cejudo and Cruz might be colliding at some point. So leave those 2 out of it. I like the Batista matchup. I don't like winner versus loser, meaning coming off the previous fights. But Batista, his stock didn't jump like it should have off a win over Aldo. Maybe facing Figueiredo might make sense. Good stuff there. All right, so let me ask you this: has Yan shown you guys, can he be a world champion again? Dan Tom, it's not as easy as people think.
It is tough, especially in that division. It's really tough. His transition game is so awesome, but the transitions are typically controlled by the wrestling. And, Merab Dvalishvili, we didn't, like you guys just brought up, I was there live for that fight. We didn't see that long ago. We're talking about Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili, right? So that's kind of the hard stop for me. And of course, hashtag Umar is coming. I mean, this guy's like Omar from The Wire. You know what I'm saying? Like, pave the way. We still got to see what this guy does, right? And we're still, ironically enough, still finding out about Umar, even though he just had finally, a 5-round fight We still haven't seen him in a title fight, but he's there. So yes, still more to see from me.
Dan, was that Figueiredo fight with Yan in the small cage? Do you recall? At the Virgin?
I believe that was wow. That's a good question. I believe it was a regulation size, but it could have been. But they haven't been taking the small cage in I want to say like over half a decade. I feel like we haven't seen it outside of the Apex or the where Merab Dvalishvili and Petr Yan at the Virgin hotels here, which we've had like one of those since the pandemic, right, guys? So we really haven't seen that small cage. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nolan or Mike, anybody, but we haven't seen that in a minute.
Yeah, I didn't recall off the top of my head. I was just wondering if maybe that looks like a slightly different fight in a bigger cage with Petr Yan having more room to operate. I'm sure he would be more competitive, but in my mind, I feel like Yan versus Umar would maybe be the trickier fight for Umar between him and Merab. So I don't know. They're all good.
And Mike, I want to stay with you on something here. A lot of times a former champ, the road back isn't easy. I stated that, but he's got to go through these guys that are just grinders, wrestlers, endless cardio. But I think where Petr Yan has really, really shined is not just his physical abilities, mentally. It really looks like if you shove him into these fights, he's going to be competitive. And great point about the octagon, because if he's fighting in title fights, that is 33% more real estate.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he got 49 takedowns shot on him, a single fight record by Merab in that first fight. Defended 38 of them, got taken down 11 times. Wow. It's not like he took a ton of damage there. Like, you could maybe see an avenue to maybe he lands something on one of those takedown attempts. He'd be more ready for it, all that kind of stuff. So I think a rematch would go differently. I don't know if I would pick Petr Yan to win, but it would be, I think, a very compelling fight again. And bantamweight, you can't go wrong. I mean, trying to reclaim the title in any division is tough. This weight class is absolutely a shark tank, so it's going to be tricky for anyone to get back there.
You got to repeat that one more time. You weren't bullshitting. He attempted 48 takedowns. Is that what you said?
49 takedowns.
49 takedowns. And he defended. Wow. That's pretty amazing, man. All the way around. How many attempts? How many were defended? That's crazy. All right. I did not know that stat.